Welcome to the My House Podcast, a show about the past, present, and future goings-on at the My House Youth Drop-In Center in Wasilla, Alaska, with your host, Michelle Overstreet.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 13 of the My House Podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Overstreet, and today Isaac and I are going to be talking about the national conference on Ending Homelessness that we attended last week. It was a nationwide conference and with a few international people in attendance, and it was phenomenal.
Does that make me our guest?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
I think that does.
I get to be the guest.
Yeah,
I never get to be the guest.
I love that. And so, Isaac, any housekeeping updates?
Yeah, just to touch on the fact that the 31st is International Overdose Awareness Day, and the Opioid Task Force, in conjunction with My House and the Gathering Grounds Cafe, is doing an event over at Nunley Park right here next to the building in downtown Wasilla. Bacon is better than drugs is the theme, and there'll be free bacon cheeseburgers. So come get free bacon cheeseburgers, if nothing else, and also hang out, learn some information, grow as a community. Podcast side of things, just reminding people, actually this episode is coming out a little bit late because this is the first day that both of us in conjunction are back in the office after this conference. But Diag Nonsense will still be out next Wednesday. My House Podcast will be out the Wednesday after. We have a couple guests coming up on Diag Nonsense. We're talking about the next two episodes are two concepts that are super interesting to kind of all of us. One is about the theory of planned behavior that is going around the psych fields right now, and the other one is about a new study that explores whether or not there's actually a link between serotonin levels and depression. So kind of some stuff that's near and dear to all three of our hearts, and in that subject field, those will be really good. Redemption in My Voice, I think we're kind of looking at an early September comeback date, early to mid-September. So never fear, those will be back as well. And when they come back, we will definitely have some super cool guests lined up. We were already started working on who we're going to be bringing in, so that'll be fun. But that's all I have. So let's talk about this conference that was, I guess, last week when this is coming out. It was super fun to be in D.C., first of all. I mean, I'd never been there before, so that's a great environment to have a conference like that, I feel like.
Yeah, it was really fun to be there with the youth. We took, our focus was youth this year, youth engagement and involvement. And so we had youth with us and several who had never been there before, and just looking at the monuments and memorials and the history that's there in Washington, D.C.
The hotel we were at was where the assassination attempt against Ronald Reagan was.
Right.
Which is like just a wild piece of random hit. Like it's just stuff like that. Like everywhere we walked, like there was something that had happened at some point. Like even if we weren't at the monuments.
Right. It was, and I think we also visited with both of our U.S. senators, Senator Dan Sullivan and Senator Lisa Murkowski's office, and just recognizing, I think for youth, recognizing the impact that your elected representative has on making national laws.
Yeah, and not everyone, like lots of people go to D.C. for vacation and stuff, and not everyone gets to go to the Senate office building. We got to go twice, so that was super, super cool. I mean, like that's kind of like the inner workings and
right, the inner sanctum for the
right.
for the supporters. So I felt really supported by our U.S. senators, and the conference on ending homelessness. The last time we had one in person was 2019. And a lot of the focus in 2019 was housing first models, coordinated entry, everybody having housing. There was a shift this time, and I don't know if it was because of COVID, because of the focus on equity that's sort of been a national trend, or if it's that there was a really strong recognition that people that were in helping positions needed support and additional sometimes services to stay strong in those positions during a pandemic with the numbers of homelessness going up and such. So I'm really excited. We've talked about this podcast, the My House Podcast, hosting the team from Housing and Urban Development. They want to come and do a podcast with us. There was a seminar there on funding funders getting together to end homelessness and a strategic framework around that. And some of it was on housing justice, which is elevating pro Black and pro-Indigenous solutions, because we realize that, housing justice and racial justice are hand in hand. But it was also really focused on well-being and wellness and liberation from homelessness. And this is really the first time that I've attended a national seminar where they talked about homelessness and the need for liberating people from homelessness.
Right. And I think it was really awesome to see kind of all of the things that we've been pushing for in the last year kind of being highlighted as stuff that other people are doing nationally. Like there's been a big shift away from the congregate shelter model and people wanting to provide emergency shelter that still has privacy and still has dignity and that's safe and secure. There was a lot of talk about, you were talking about in 2019 where it was housing first, but it was kind of like that housing only approach or like housing first. And when you get services, you'll get around to it. And now there's that big recognition that, you get someone into housing, but immediately you're providing those wraparound services for substance use disorder and mental health and, transportation and peer mentorship, like, the whole package just immediately in with that housing. And that's probably the biggest thing I think we've been pushing for just in our model and for everyone else. So it was great to see that that's what's working with everyone nationally. And that's what the push is for now. Man, there was just so much great information. I think my favorite thing about it was just meeting people kind of not in the breakout sessions, but at lunch and stuff or in the hallway and just talking. Because even when, there's a lot of different perspectives at play when you're talking about a national conference and people are coming from different areas and have slightly different approaches. But at the end of the day, that everyone is there for the same reason, which is to end homelessness. And so once you have that baseline, you can have some really great conversations about like, oh, what's working for you? What's working for me? What can we agree on and find? It's just so much more about outcomes and solutions rather than, I agree about this and you agree about this and arguments and negative discourse. Like I just felt like almost entirely all the discourse that I had was just overwhelmingly positive and constructive, which was awesome. It gave me a lot of hope, honestly.
Yeah, I felt the same way. And it's nice to be with people that have the same mission and vision that we do, to get people out of homelessness and help them to never return. And that's what that liberation word kind of came up several times. Mm-hmm. And it was the first time I'd heard that. It was very encouraging. I also think there was a nice focus on community base this really has to do with keeping people in their home community and helping them. There was a rapid rehousing session that I went into, and they actually have as part of this a rapid rehousing toolkit that I'm going to bring back and share with our local strategic planning group. But the rapid rehousing toolkit talks about the core components of getting people, keeping people in housing, and if they are losing their housing, to get them back into housing as quickly as we can and supported by community, including employment. And
right.
And that employment piece is a huge part of helping them to feel connected and like they are part of the community. When they don't have that, some of the evidence is showing that they don't feel like they're part of the community. They feel left out, marginalized, and it increases the feelings of isolation and depression.
Right. Well, and I should have mentioned that in the wraparound services, is there was a lot of talk about job training and employment, and I mean that's huge. Not only because it helps people feel involved, but also I don't know if anyone else has noticed this. You'd be hard pressed not to, but we have a huge labor shortage right now, and we have, when we have these people that all they want to do is be able to find employment, they just need that little bit of an edge or a little bit of training, and then they're golden. I mean, that's how you keep people from never having to return to homelessness again, is they have jobs that that they can do that will start them down a career path, or at the least is enough for them to be able to provide for themselves and their family. And, there's a lot of talk about that too. The other thing I think that was a big key point of the conference was the having people in your corner, on your boards, in your positions at your organization that have lived experience.
Oh, that was a huge theme.
And there were so many people there at the conference too that were coming to the conference with a background in lived experience. So there was an opportunity to hear from just tons of people from around the country that have gone through it and come out on the other side, and now they're just this champion and this advocate for what needs to change within the system. And I think those voices are just the most powerful out of that whole conference. I think they were the most powerful voices.
I agree with you. And there was really a process for some of the organizations. They actually have a training process so that people with lived experience that want to come back and help go through a philosophy to practice kind of training where they learn how to advocate and everything and it's almost like the job training that we do here, where they learn, the personal hygiene, the how to dress to impress when you're advocating, language that you can use, identifying acronyms, because not everybody knows what,
They had a whole page. They in my first session, I don't know if they did this in your first session, but it was like you had a big long breakout session for your very first session of the conference. And the first thing that they did was hand out like an 8x11 double-sided page that just had every acronym like all down the line with what people were going to be talking about. That was huge for me. I feel like I knew like some of the big ones, like you have HUD obviously, and you have VSFAT, which I already forgot what that stands for. So maybe I don't remember what everything means. But then there's just some super obscure ones. And anytime someone just started throwing out 2 or 3 acronyms, I was like, boom, reference sheet. It was awesome.
Yeah, it was really, really helpful. And so, some of those little things that we don't think of when we're sitting behind the desk that are really helpful, even to new board members. Mm-hmm. I had a new board member that said, I don't know all these acronyms. So that was a good it was a good reminder, but it was also a nice way to think about when we have youth advisory board members or young people that are starting to advocate and represent and tell their stories, how to teach them how to do that. And there's actually a program, Roger Hamaker from Nine Star and I are working with a young lady that used to be with the National Network for Youth, Amy, and she is now with an organization that sets up this training program for young people that want to advocate. So it would allow us to put them through a program that would help them to be more capable. And it goes hand in hand with our job training. So that was really exciting. And a couple of other things that I thought were really notable were the racial equity and coordinated entry advancements happening right in communities. One of the challenges that we've had with our youth that are 18 or older is that they go into a coordinated entry pool where the person who's been homeless the longest gets the immediately available bed, which when I have an 18-year-old that has never technically been homeless, but is high-functioning autism and whose parents just drop them off and say, we've done everything we can do, we can't do anything more, and we know that they're going to be extraordinarily vulnerable if they're on the street, there has to be a workaround for those most vulnerable people. And so, talking about reconfiguring that coordinated entry so that those with disabilities, those that of varying races, those who have special considerations are not at the bottom of the list just because they're the youngest.
Right.
And so that there was a really good discussion on that I wish we could recreate for our community.
Well, and that's kind of a big sticking point, I think, with people when we're talking about racial equity, just because you hear that term thrown around a lot, both in a positive and negative connotation. And so it was interesting to get a couple different perspectives on it throughout the course of the conference. I think what it comes down to for me is every community is different, right? And we're kind of in a unique situation where, I mean, if we're going to be completely candid, the Valley is a pretty white area when it comes to demographics. But, obviously we have a fairly sizable Alaska Native population throughout the state, which would make sense when you're talking about the group of people that are native to the land that we live in.
Occupy, right?
Right. And so it's interesting to see what we can do as a community to just make sure that in everything that we do and every solution that we propose, we're not alienating a group of people, that we're not disqualifying a group of people based off of something like race, but also, tons of other factors too. We were just talking about mental illness or mental disability, and that's another portion of the population that is often disqualified from certain things. And what the data shows us is that a lot of people that are struggling with chronic homelessness and long-term homelessness often do have some sort of disability, be it physical or mental. And a lot of these strategies can be used to make sure that we're not discluding that portion of the population. Because at the end of the day, we need to make sure that everyone has an equal opportunity to get the help that they need. And I think that's the bottom line of all of that, all of those discussions on equity throughout the conference. I think that you can come at this from any different perspective, and everyone is going to have a different perspective because, someone that lives in Houston, Texas, someone that lives in Connecticut on the northeast side, someone that lives in California, and myself who live in Wasilla, we're all going to have different perspectives because we all come from wildly different backgrounds. But if we can at least hit that baseline of everyone needs a fair shake and an equal opportunity to find the help that they need, and just making sure that we do that in a way that gives everyone a fair chance. And it doesn't have to be about someone's skin color. It doesn't have to be about whether or not they have a disability. It just has to be you're a person that needs help, and we're going to make sure that regardless of your situation, that we're going to help you get the help that you need. I think that's something that everyone can get behind. And that's why I liked those random conversations with people, because even if we didn't always agree on approach or we came from wildly different backgrounds, when you have that baseline of everyone needs to be able to have a chance to find help, then you can start to get stuff done.
Well, there was our general population for Alaska Native is about 30% of our clientele. So 1 out of 3 kids. The LGBTQ population is another population that is marginalized and challenged with respect to the, safe spaces and creating room for. We're a little bit lower. We're about 13% on the LGBTQ population for our clients. But we had some great discussions at this national conference about how people were engaging and creating space. And we were able to share some of the things that we do. We've got a Trevor Rollman, who is an Alaska commercial fisherman, donated $3,000 worth of fresh salmon last year that has been in our freezer all year. And our clients come every day. They can come for a hot supper at 3:00 and eat. And they have salmon about once a week as a result of that. And so what's really fun is, when we're talking about culture and maintaining culture, having moose meat, having salmon for clients to eat across the board. It doesn't matter if they're Alaska
everyone
Native.
shows up for Salmon Day.
Everyone shows up for salmon. It's the most popular supper we have, and we have a little Japanese lady named Makiko who cooks. And if we have salmon and Makiko, it's a hot day at the supper club. So we have lots of kids that show up because they just love it. Underground Railroad information highway is working fine
Yes.
if for the supper club opportunities. And so I really like that. I also like that we have volunteers that are extremely diverse and that represent for Alaska Native communities and come and do, different kinds of art and empowerment and classes and that are engaged in supporting clients to kind of find their cultural ground wire. A lot of our clients are disconnected from their families or don't have a strong relationship with them. So finding mentors that are appropriate and that allow them that cultural support is also really important. And those are some things that are different from what we saw across the country in some of the places that you talked about, LA and Connecticut. You don't see that that need so much.
Well, and I think it's just because, just because having that cultural connection isn't important to you doesn't mean that it isn't important for someone else that's from a different situation. And so getting feedback on that from clients, I think, is obviously super important in that situation, because if it is important to someone, then we want to be able to provide them that opportunity to connect with someone that is from that background, and that can give them that connection to their culture. I mean, we have a lot of clients that have come to us not from Wasilla, but from various villages from across the state. And even if you or me isn't able to provide that cultural connection, we have people that can. And I think to some of our clients, that's a super important aspect of services, is being able to stay connected to that background.
Yep, I agree with you wholeheartedly. And I also like the we've received some criticism in the community around LGBTQ services, and had some former clients that made statements that I didn't feel like were necessarily representative. But one of the things that we just did week before last, Isaac, where you were there, was our youth advisory board, and we sit down with, how many kids were at that meeting? A dozen?
Oh, easily, probably about 15, I'd say.
And we just sit down and say, what do you guys want? How do you want us to handle this? What do you want this to look like? And one of the things that we did that with was Pride Month, and we've done that in the past where, when we sat down with our clients and our youth advisors in a meeting like that and said, what do you want to do for Pride Month? They basically said nothing. We don't want to march in the streets. We just want to be accepted and included in everything that's going on, and we don't want it to be a big deal. And I was surprised by that, and a little bit unsure about how to kind of manage it, because in the big scope of things, part of what I think is perceived as welcoming to those clients is having sort of an out of the box, pride focus. And for our clients, what they told us is that they are much more comfortable if they're just treated like everybody else and accepted, and their needs are met. And I so appreciated their, one, willingness to articulate that and be just straightforward about it, and two, for making the climate here what they want it to be and not what they think it should be based on some expectation.
Right. And I think, to kind of put a cap on the conversation about, the lived experience aspect and the equity aspect, I think at the end of the day, what my biggest takeaway was, and kind of what my opinion on it was before, was that it doesn't really matter what I think personally when it comes to these issues. If we just provide space for our clients to be able to make the space that they want and have them at the head of the decision-making process, and this was a big cornerstone of the lived experience conferences, is if you just let the people that are going to be most affected by the implementation of events or rules or, whatever it may be, if you let those people make the decisions, or at the very least have a voice in the conversation when it comes to plan on what our next steps are, then you're going to get a solution that works for everyone. Because if a solution isn't what the people that are going to be impacted by it want, then it's not going to work.
That's right. It has to be made for the people that are receiving the services and anchored in that. And and so we're having fun with our $23 million appropriation, just kind of drilling down to some of those needs and what the not just what the community need is, but what the youth vision is for that.
Yeah, and I think having that YAB meeting right before going down to the conference was really great, because then that allowed both of us to go to some of the breakout sessions that were directly related to what our clients were talking about and wanted in that meeting. And I don't want to talk a ton about that, because there's kind of a lot of projects and ideas that have spawned from both that meeting and then the conference. But I'm super excited for some of the more long-term projects and ideas that we have, both for the organization and for that building and that property. I just, like I just said, I think that the people with the lived experience and that are going to be impacted most by these building projects and some of the events that we have coming, I think that them deciding as a group what they think would be best and what is going to work best for not only themselves but the people that are coming behind them is only going to help us be more effective. And that's why this conference was just so great to be a part of, because it lets us see exactly what our clients are talking about happening elsewhere in the nation, and we can see what works, and now we get the chance to kind of come back and start to implement it.
Mm-hmm. I love that too. And it also, it's so educational. I mean, I had people on panel discussions for some of the sessions that I attended that were from, universities all across the country, and that were part of the national Interagency Council on Homelessness and the technical assistance at Housing First University. And
it was a great balance of those people and the people with the lived experience that had been in those programs too. Right. And so it was just everyone bounced off each other so perfectly.
It was so much fun. And it really created I think it really created a synchronicity where you have the people that are doing the research and collecting the data, and then the people with the lived experience all saying, this is how it works the best. And what my takeaway from that, Isaac, was it works the best in communities where communities focus on helping the people that are from their own community and really lifting them up. And the word liberating came up several times. They need the wraparound services like you've talked about several times, the substance use disorder, the behavioral health, the job training and education pieces, and the mentorship, the peer mentorship with people with lived experience, kind of guiding them, and safety, a place to stay where they're safe in the meantime.
Right.
And it was just so much fun to be. A special shout out to the Matsu Health Foundation, who helped us afford to be able to take that trip and go. We're so grateful that they're encouraging and supportive of the education and engagement for our youth advisory board and our staff to be able to be really up to date on the homeless progress around the country.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, any final thoughts, Isaac, on how it all turned out?
I think just look out on the horizon. Look for us to keep doing what we're doing, and also to keep chugging along on the projects that we have, and for us to continue to look for new projects and new ways that we can help the community.
Oh, yeah.
I can't wait till next year, hopefully, when we're able to check back in with the conference again and update people on our progress and see what's changing nationwide, because it was just so it was definitely, even though the travel was a little tiring, it definitely gave me a lot of energy for moving forward.
Yeah, very motivational. So that's all the time we have for today, Isaac. I want to thank you for being my guest and my companion on the conference trip. It was really wonderful to have young people there with enthusiasm. The My House podcast is recorded at the My House studio in Wasilla, Alaska. Our producer and editor is Isaac Smolden. I'm Michelle Overstreet. Until next time.